McGuire hit his record breaker. We were asking back here, who did he hit it off of? Because so Chris,
that was an easy one.
Tell the people about your frustration with the Aaron Judge home run, Jace.
I'm just tired of. What was that?
I can't speak today.
Jace.
I became Sean Connery.
I'm just tired of people going after opponents of Judge, being like, "Why aren't you pitching to him? They shouldn't be walking him." Hey, you're a good hitter. I'm not going to pitch to you if I don't want to. Like, I'm enough with this. Because he's close to a record, I should just groove fastballs like Chan-Ho Park. Like, get out of here. I'm tired of these people complaining.
Well, no, just don't be afraid. Just pitch to the guy. That's all.
If I have a base open, he's their best hitter. Sorry.
Classic Jace.
Not even certain he's there.
You can't let Judge beat you is the bottom line.
It's the Gacky.
Especially Stanton's not hot right now. He's got to get hot, but the way Judge is pitching, he's the one player you identify, hey, this guy will not beat me. We used to say that about Barry Bonds, and then he'd hit a home run off us, and he'd beat us anyway. But you say going in, your game plan is we will not. But then again, if you walked him to walk in a run, right? You've seen that, the intentional walk with the bases loaded. I think the fan bases go crazy and the analytics people go crazy, but I don't want Judge hitting home runs off us.
I would like, I'm not kidding you, for us to start having commercials where Chris Cody comes to you on behalf of cowardice. On behalf of, I just want to be afraid of people and I want to argue on behalf of what no one wants at the ballpark, which is to see Aaron Judge walked. Incidentally, wearing number 99, look at me, Louie.
Little bit, yeah.
I mean, not little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If you wear number 99.
And he plays for the Yankees. I got like 17 numbers to pick from.
David, the real home run champion, single season home run champion is?
Barry Bonds.
Why are people not doing that? Why are people bringing out Roger Maris's son? Why are people trying to cling retroactively to changing how the numbers work?
Because, Dan, the home run record isn't who actually holds it. It's whoever holds it that was wearing pinstripes.
Exactly.
That's the real record. The Yankee with the most home runs.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think it's just people like the Hall of Famers. Ferguson Jenkins came out yesterday saying, you know what, there are a lot of people who think that the home run record is 61. Way to go, Aaron. You've tied the actual home run record. And there are Hall of Famers who think it, but the reason they think that is they're just upset that they didn't do steroids, so they didn't get the pay and the contracts that the steroids people use. So there's that sort of level of jealousy amongst many of the older players. But someone like Roger Maris Jr. who comes out, he was the happiest guy in the ballpark. I was talking about this on Nothing Personal today. That makes me laugh. He wasn't happy that the record was tied. He was happy he got to leave Toronto, right? He didn't want to go to games anymore. It was 7 games in a row, so he was hugging everyone in sight. And but the true story of yesterday was the guy who dropped the ball. You got to get him on the show.
It's not too late. If you're a retired baseball player, what's stopping you from doing some steroids and coming back, hitting some dingers?
Ferguson Jenkins? I think what's stopping him is probably the metal detector at every ballpark.
Yes, it's too late for him.
It is too late for him, but that's not what she was talking about. What's stopping anybody as a retired ball player? What is your best guess on what's going on with Pujols right now?
Pujols is part of a club, but listen, Albert Pujols is
one club.
The Just Hit Lefties Club.
What is that?
The Just Hit Lefties.
He's part of a club.
Just Hit Lefties Club.
Listens to this show and our show, and I will say this. Albert Pujols has never tested positive. There are myriad players from my time who never tested positive. Did they do steroids? We won't know for sure because we have no proof of it. Are there things that we saw in the clubhouse that would give us an indication that something was going on that we ignored? Because what do we care? We want runs scored and we want fan engagement and we want attendance and we want revenue and we want asset appreciation. Is that possible? Yeah. Were there people from the Dominican who lied about their age? Yes. Does that mean Albert did? It doesn't mean he did, but it means that many people did who were in his situation. But none of that takes away from what he accomplished because you and I could do steroids all day long, performance-enhancing drugs, and not hit 700 home runs in a career.
Jenkins is 80.
Is he really 80 right now?
He's 80 years old. David, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, during those sad, haunting shows where we were going through all of your notes, like the notebooks in 7 that belonged to Kevin Spacey, I believe. Didn't you tell Mike Ryan that you guys had all sorts of plans around possibly Stanton breaking Maris's record and pretending that it was the real record?
So you may recall in 2017, there was not break-ins on national broadcast when Stanton was at 59 home runs and had set the record for the Marlins and won the MVP. It was a monster year and in an otherwise disappointing, sort of depressing year for the franchise the year after Jose had died. But Stanton's season was epic. And our view of it always was, hey, listen, just get to 61 if you can, tie Maris, because then we're going to get to say, hey, look at Mr. Clean. And he is. Giancarlo Stanton is Adonis, right? Like, and I've been around him since he was a kid, so you can tell sort of what players are and what they do and what they don't do. And he is perfect in every way. And this is not me being a weird fan. This is me just having seen him naked. And so the fact is that we wanted to promote it in a way that was uncomfortable.
I mean, you don't have to see him naked to see that Giancarlo Stanton looks great in a uniform.
It appears that this was a life-changing experience for David, because he talks about Giancarlo Stanton in such glowing terms.
I mean, he is an Adonis, though. He wasn't he on the cover of a magazine wearing only body paint?
Yes, he was.
ESPN, the magazine. Yeah. The body is.
He actually autographed that to me. I wish I could show it to you right now, but it's hanging in a different place.
You had him autograph that?
He autographed and said, "I bet you wish you had applied the paint." Love, Giancarlo.
So he knows how creepy you were around him. He noticed
it's not
you.
Creepy.
It sounds creepy.
Well, if he knows that, it's creepy. I mean,
but by the way, so there are people who don't look good in uniforms, and the number one example, and I can maybe come up with the top 5 list if I had a minute, of the people who don't look good in uniforms but have unbelievably fit Adonis-like bodies. Number 1 on the list for sure is Juan Pierre.
Well, he wore those baggy uniforms, yes, and
that's the point.
Yes,
he looked small and sort of like nothing, and then all of a sudden he takes off his shirt, and you look at him and say, "Oh my God!"
That's not the point. The point is that only Starling Marte and Giancarlo Stanton look great in a uniform. It's damn near impossible to look like that in a uniform.
He liked wearing, he would always do, we would talk to Stanton. It would drive us crazy when he would not promote the Marlins the way we'd want him to, because he was so upset with the franchise and so upset with the losing and so upset with the players coming and going and all of the craziness that went on. When he would do interviews, post-game interviews, do you recall that he would wear very tight, sleeveless workout tops and not Marlin stuff?
Yes.
I don't know if you all remember
yeah.
this.
He would always do this. It would be like those Lululemon super dry fit things.
Tightest things you could ever find, where he just looks like a Hulk, but not promoting the Marlins. And I would say to him, "Why can't you wear Marlin stuff?" He said, "You can't tell me what to wear." And the problem is he had all the leverage, and he was right.
What do you make
now with the Yankees? He wears Yankee stuff whenever he does his interviews.
I'm good for the occasional thirsty show, but put it together, guys.
Yeah, I know. Well, wait a minute. You're putting it on. Okay. Bang. Don Mattingly. Don Mattingly was let go. And
look, you asked him a legitimate question about the preparation and how he was planning to celebrate Giancarlo Stanton, and then we just got into body paint.
I blame Samson. He does this every time Stanton comes up. Every time, this is what he does.
That's not accurate.
Mattingly,
but that's fine. You can have recency bias if you want.
Mattingly was let go. We have not talked about it this week. The Marlins, they don't have a lot of major league ready players. Jazz Chisholm, I think, is their only position player that you want back next year for sure.
Would you rather have Jazz or Zach Gallen right now?
Man, I love Jazz. I want to see Jazz's career play out here.
Okay. I'd rather have Zach Gallen.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to.
It's harder to find. Listen, you don't go back on trades. That's a good trade for both teams. Jazz is a great player, but finding an ace, and you can't blame the Marlins. I don't think anyone thought Zach Gallen would turn into an ace the way he has, but you rather have him on your team. The thing with Don Madden, I just want to point out that it was. They say it was mutual, and that's how it's being released. There is no such thing as a mutual parting of ways with a manager. It does not exist. It's done for PR purposes. It's done because Bruce Sherman already stepped on himself when he fired Conine and Dawson and Perez, etc. Don Mattingly is a legend, the longest tenured manager with the Marlins. But they were moving on from Don. Don knew it, they knew it, and they let Don resign on his own terms at his own time, and which he chose September 25th, and that was not a coincidence. But I think he goes down as the second, and maybe as the third best manager in Marlins franchise behind McKeon and Jim Leyland, because winning the World Series matters. but he brought stability to a franchise that lacks stability, and I think people may forget about that.
What do you buy yourself by doing it that way versus fired? Like, who really cares? We know that managers generally want to stay in the jobs.
Yeah, you don't. So that's the irony, is that when you run a team, you make believe that the fans don't know what's happening, right? We absolutely assume total ignorance with fan bases. And so we say, oh, Don Mattingly resigned. He's decided not to come back. And the majority of fans will agree. But it's horse hockey, right? Every fan should now know that when you are resigning from a job like that, it means that you did it 1 second after you got fired.
My point, though, is, okay, so everyone knows it, but what does it actually buy you? Like what?
Nothing.
So what's the point of doing it?
I just said PR. It's for fans to believe that Bruce Sherman did not fire Don Mattingly.
Who believes that?
Does anyone care even?
I don't even know.
Bruce Sherman cares.
Okay.
And also, I think Don Mattingly has a national cachet that people give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, why would Donnie Baseball want to stick around there? That's a nowhere franchise, and he's certainly had illustrious stops in his career. No way would he want to sign up to do this again.
And does it have to always be an ugly exit? Like, can it just be they've been together a while, they respect him, they want to go in a different direction? Like, hey, let's part ways amicably. Oh, wow. Can't believe I even tried that word this early.
It's a tough one. I know.
Yeah, that does not that sounds good in fantasy land, right, Chris? But the fact is that the manager Don wanted to stay, no matter what he says, and he should have had the right to stay in theory because it's not his fault. As Jack used to say, you can't win the Kentucky Derby with a bunch of donkeys. It's hard for the Marlins to win games with the players they have.
We've got Jeremy Taché, who's around the team here, and I don't think I've been reading reports. It's not like I've been following minor league Marlin baseball, but evidently from Real Muto and Yelich and Stanton, they've got only 2 guys who are still anywhere in the organization, neither of them contributing. And their minor leagues don't have major league ready players either. Is there another player other than Jazz Chisholm, position player, that for sure is coming back next year, that you want back and you're excited about having back?
There's not a ton, to be perfectly honest. There's not a ton of players on this roster that you'd be excited about to have back. But what it is that they don't have other stars, right, to go along with Jazz. They have a bunch of guys in the Joey Wendells and the John Birdies.
Brian Anderson.
Really good to contribute to a team. But when you're trying to use those guys to build a lineup behind good pitching, you're going to be in some trouble. Like, they don't have a lot coming in reinforcements.
But you're being, like, a couple years ago, they legitimately were a minor. Like, I think that these guys are major leaguers most places. They're not above average major leaguers, but I just want to push back a little on.
I just said they've got one position player you'd want back next year.
And
one.
You're
Are
probably
you upset
right.
with the signing of Soler and Garcia? Or were you happy they spent the money?
Yes, I was happy they spent the money. Garcia's been a disaster.
He's been
I
terrible.
didn't expect him to not be able to hit for power anymore.
What are you doing to poor Brian Anderson?
No, that guy's frustrated me for 5 years because he's exactly Brian Anderson. They were telling me for years that he was going to be a star position player, and he's just been Brian Anderson. And
leave the kid alone.
He's in the lineup every day. He's one of their best players, and he's just right around league average on everything.
I think it's what we all thought he was going to be the next Yelich.
Right? You want us to spend money, so then we spend money, or owners spend money, presidents, whatever, and then the players suck. So I don't know what to say. To me, be a consequentialist. It doesn't matter if they spent that money on Soler and Garcia because it was a total waste of money. Even at the time, there wasn't one team in baseball, one agent or one executive who looked at those signings and said, wow, that's putting together an offensive lineup.
What are you laughing about?
I mean, he's doing his best out there, Brian Anderson. I don't know why you had that reaction to that player. There's plenty of players you could have the same reaction to. You only had it to Brian Anderson.
Kevin Durant is
why
doing
am I
it.
defending Brian
Kevin
Anderson?
Durant is doing his best out there. Now, Stugotz is
player.
now the arguer on behalf of doing their best out there.
He's trying, Dan.
Yes, Brian Anderson is trying. I
mean, he's limited. They're limited.
Look, I don't mean to make this about poor Brian Anderson. He's been a serviceable player who's been very professional and has not caused them a problem. My general problem is for what he represents, which is just a guy named Brian Anderson. Any guy named Brian Anderson. They could have had 9 Brian Andersons for the last 10 seasons, and the results would have been the same.
He looks generic, sounds generic. It's all just the
he's
generic
doing his
replacement
best.
level.
He's doing
He's not a member of the
Leave him
union.
alone.
There's no way.
It's
He's not a
Brian
players'
Anderson.
union member.
He's the
You're
GM.
making him a symbol for everything that's wrong with this organization.
That's
this
really not
poor
fair.
Kid. I mean,
When did you?
Brian Anderson was one of our players, and we were looking at him to sign him to actually a long-term deal. We expected him to be an absolute above-average major leaguer. We had him, let's say, to be a 65-70 player, which is an all-star type player, and we got that one wrong.
What is the movie you're reviewing for us this week?
Let's talk about House of Hammer. Have you guys talked about that yet?
No.
Have you heard of it?
Is it the Armie Hammer movie?
Yes.
I read reports recently that were legitimate about him selling timeshares in the Cayman Islands, that someone outed him as just working a desk in the Cayman.
Well, everyone assumes his career is over because of all the women that came forward about his behavior. I also read that Robert Downey Jr. has taken an interest in him and is trying to rehabilitate him.
Because Mel Gibson, I think, did the same thing for Robert Downey Jr. It's like passed me down on addiction and stuff. Yeah. What happened? How's the documentary?
Do you want to be rehabilitated by Mel Gibson? That really doesn't seem. Now,
he's been rehabilitated.
But if you're Robert Downey, are you going to actually put your entire Marvel career on the line by standing behind Armie Hammer? If he watches House of Hammer, my guess is he's not going to stand behind him anymore. It is unbelievable. Maybe it's based on House of Gucci, but it's called House of Hammer. So this goes back to his grandfather, his great-grandfather. All of them were abusers, misogynists, felons, criminals, violent. It's insane. The genetic aspect of it, which makes no sense to me because it must just be based on their level of privilege and wealth, that they thought they could get away with anything. And it's not that they got away with fiscal crimes. They were getting away with violent crimes and what they were doing to the people in their lives. And so the documentary goes through almost like explaining Armie Hammer's provenance of being a monster, right? My father was a monster. My grandfather was a monster. Therefore, ergo, I'm a monster. That does not fly with me. You've got to be able to stop that. You've got to find a way to control that or to get the help you need to not be the type of monster he is. And these women are basically on camera telling you the things that he would do. He's a celebrity, he's famous, and he's good looking. And when he would slide into the DMs of women, they'd want to talk to him. And he would be charming and loving and nice and amazing. And then he'd say, I'd like to eat you. And not like Maurice Sendak, I'd like to eat you, like where the wild things are. Like he would bite them and want to eat them and tie them up, and all of it without consent. All of it after they would say, no, that's too much. That does not make me comfortable. I said the safe word. After all of that, he would still do those things. And he got outed and then got absolutely canceled. And the Cayman Islands story is he grew up in the Cayman Islands. His family moved to the Cayman Islands, this Hammer family. They're an oil family, Armie Hammer. And that's why he may be working a desk job in the Cayman Islands. It's an interesting documentary, but it is absolutely sickening to watch.
You mentioned Mel Gibson, and I've been surprised to see him appearing in new release after new release. Mel Gibson, I did not think was going to be able to endure in today's Hollywood. Are you surprised that Mel Gibson is still getting so much work?
There's still anti-Semitism that's rampant, and actually anti-Semitism is worse now than ever. And you could argue that even worse than in World War II. I don't think there's not a Holocaust going on, but the anti-Semitism is very much on the rise. And Mel Gibson forget his anti-Semitic behavior, his behavior toward women, his behavior, he's just racist in general on top of everything else, and misogynistic. And the movies he's getting are terrible movies. He's not an A-lister anymore. He's trying to hold on. So he does not have a spot in Hollywood. He's been grandfathered into a spot of doing crap movies, almost like the way Bruce Willis did before we knew he was sick, when he was taking all those movie roles, or you would argue sometimes, Mike, what Nick Cage was doing, which I always disagreed with. But Mel Gibson's movies are terrible. And I want him to be in more movies. The greatest revenge I can have against Mel Gibson is for his career to be marked by all of the crap that he does now versus the good movies that he did before.
There were reports that he's set to direct Lethal Weapon 5, replacing Richard Donner, who passed away.
Okay. Is Joe Pesci in it?
I'm not. I don't know. I'm just saying he does get like some box office. I know he was in that Will Ferrell Mark Wahlberg vehicle. Like, he still gets occasional mainstream roles, the way that Nick Cage would when he was also trying to get money on the side with B films.
So I think that it'd be hard to argue that what he's doing now, no matter who else is in the movies with him, that it's anything like he was in the beginning of his career with Braveheart, with Lethal Weapon, etc. So I think my point stays the same, but I understand to get canceled in Hollywood, right? The people who get canceled in Hollywood back in the day, the McCarthy era. Am I talking about something that makes me look old? The McCarthy era. Does anyone know what that is?
Yeah, it's the McCarthy era. Yes, when there were scarlet letters about everybody being accused as being a communist in this country.
Right, and they had to actually. There's great movies about it, like Trumbo. There's great movies where people had to write under different nom de plumes. Right, it's crazy. Mel Gibson should not be allowed to make movies, but money's money, as you know. It's just business.
David, thank you again. Nothing Personal is the name of the podcast. You should find it. It has more expertise than you will find on any media platform from a sports executive. Thank you, sir. Stugotz, I don't know how long it's been since we had around here a primetime football game that anybody in Miami cared about the way that they might be likely to care tonight, when the nation that might be tired of Dolphin talk, that might be ready at this minute to say the Dolphins are a fraud. They just let Buffalo punch themselves out. It was a home game. The sun was the reason that the Miami Dolphins won that game. Tonight, there are a whole lot of people ready to pounce tomorrow to tell you that the Dolphins, after perhaps a 3-1 opening to the season, failed on a Thursday night 3 days after playing that game. If they lose tonight and they are an underdog, the line, is the line still growing? Because I
think it's Bengals -4, maybe 4.5.
It wasn't 3, because people are telling you that the Bengals, who have all sorts of offensive line problems and who also played very recently, are at home, and usually you get 3 points if you're better than somebody at home. But they're saying, no, the money is saying we expect football to football tonight, that the Bengals aren't going to start 2-2, and the Dolphins, we don't believe, the money is saying, we don't believe they're a 4-0 football team.
The Bengals are playing on short rest as well. They played the Jets last week. They beat the Jets last week. The Dolphins played in extreme heat, much more violent game, much tougher game. And then you have the Bengals at 1-2. They are the team that went to the Super Bowl out of the AFC last year. So that's probably why people are expecting them to win. I am surprised. I got to be honest. Like, I was listening to Keyshawn and Damian Woody on the way in this morning. They're still not sold on the Dolphins, and they're still critical of Tua. And I find that to be amazing that people in the national media don't want to give this team credit, don't want to give the coach credit, and don't want to give the quarterback credit. And the quarterback has been a top 5 quarterback through the first 3 games of the season.
Yeah, but Stugotz, you are the king of, like, show me a bigger sample size. Like, he's done it, but I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm as excited as the Dolphins as I could be, but I get people needing to just see more from Tua. It's not that unreasonable.
I think Dan is more the king of larger sample size. I'm more in the moment type of person.
But you're like, do it in the playoffs.
Yeah, but they did it against the Bills and the Ravens. Like, those are 2 really good teams.
They did do it against the Bills and the Ravens, but we also know that there are a couple of bounces from being 1-2 against the Bills and the Ravens, because that league is funny that way. And possibly tonight, and I don't love this 3 games in, Tua's already dealing with back and ankle. That's 3 games in, and he's going to do the most he can tonight, and he'll tough it out and everything else. And I'm like, is this necessary to put the you already got a winning, I understand every game matters in that league. You don't dump any games, but is it necessary to risk his lower body, the issues that he's had because he's got back and ankle, and you got to get out there against Cincinnati no matter what, 4th week of the season?
Yes, I do think it's necessary, because you're still trying to evaluate the quarterback, and part of that evaluation is, how can he play through injury? It's football. You need to be available, and that's the book on Tua. He's always hurt.
Fair enough, but you just saw it happen to Baker Mayfield's career, playing hurt through, grinding through the pressure of, I've got to do this for my team and my city, and we're 3 games in, and it's already back and ankle, and the NFLPA going and saying we need to recheck the concussion protocol because it looked to us as well. We're all experts now on diagnosing concussions from far away.
Say what you will, though, the Browns upgraded at the position, though. They took that as data, and even it would appear that even Jacoby Brissett is an upgrade over the position. So this is all, you're trying to evaluate evaluate this quarterback still.
And when the criticism is, hey, he can't stay healthy, you don't sit him because he's on a short week. If he can play and he wants to play, he play. It's a guts game tonight, Dan. Show the country, if you're Tua, that you have guts. You're going to play through the pain on a short week after Buffalo, go into Cincinnati and get your defense a win. You want to know why? The defense got you a win last week. Go get him a win. Keep him off the field. Let me see the running game from Mike McDaniel tonight. I'm not buying like this house money game. The Dolphins are good. You don't lose, Dan. You lose this game. 3-1 start. We feel good about it until you lose a game that you're not supposed to lose, and you wish you had that Cincinnati game back. Go beat them.
This isn't a game like. If they lose this game, what can you glean from that? They were their defense was on the field for 90 plays. That was a very physically and emotionally draining situation. They come into Cincinnati on a short week. I understand Bengals are on a short week too, but they're not traveling. And as you mentioned, it's a reigning AFC champ. There's so many reasons as to why this won't go Miami's way. If it does, though, then I think somehow the excitement in this town gets even more amplified.
But if you're asking, what do you glean from this game, isn't that the argument for not playing Tua? And just seeing if Teddy Bridgewater can dink and dunk 16-13 away to a victory on the road. And if he doesn't, then you didn't glean anything from the game anyway.
He can't do
that. What if he toughs it out and starts making plays on the road against the AFC champion?
Exactly.
Then this becomes more of a real thing.
I'm not arguing on behalf of sitting him. I'm simply framing for you what the Dolphins, as they get their practice filmed by somebody who snuck into the University of Cincinnati and was just revealing it on social media, as Tua walks in to that stadium and someone heckles him with "you suck," and his response is, "We beat you. We beat you last year." I guess saying it to a Cincy fan, or I don't know whether it's a Bengals fan.
Bearcat.
Yeah,
it was an Alabama.
Yeah. Regardless, Tua is going into the pressure cooker, and I'm just framing for you. We're at week 3 of insanity. Okay, it's been insanity around this person, and already we got back and ankle, and we all think head as well, and he's giving the quotes to, "I'm going to do everything I can," and I'm just framing for you how short-sighted everything and everyone in this league is about pressurizing the moment of you got to grind it out there. And hey, Herbert, take a shot to your ribs for that. For go out there and go do that against Jacksonville. And this is a guy who's been injured, and I'm not suggesting caution. I'm just telling you, 3 weeks in, and we're already here, where the Bills secondary is all banged up. There's a Watt down over here and a Bosa over here, and you're rushing your quarterback out there on 3 days rest, and Stugotz is at the back of, like, get him more respect. Play hurt. You did this to Baker. You Baker Mayfield.
You're putting Tua in such a bad spot. It's such a bad look.
I'm doing it.
If you do, no, the Dolphins would be doing it if he didn't play tonight. Like, Dan, everyone plays these Thursday night games. You know what
he's hurt.
You know what he gets after tonight? He gets 10 days off after tonight. He can rest up.
Why are we assuming the Dolphins are going to put their franchise quarterback in harm? If they don't think he can play, they'll sit him. They're 3-0. They have to be more willing to sit him now than if they were 0-3. Like, they know the schedule coming up. I get it. They want him to play. This is a test for Tua.
This is not
this
is not like, stop making the excuses. Like, he's got a back and ankle. He's got football. Like, I don't understand.
Burrow's coming off a surgery.
That's playing the position in the league. And some people rise above it. I mean, Baker Mayfield had a different injury. It's not exactly that. We don't know the extent of the back. Hell, there are people out there that don't even think the back injury is real because he was very clearly concussed.
The only point that I'm making to you is that at a month in and at 3-0, the idea that the pressure would be that enormous. I'm not looking forward to this team having some adversity, but I feel for the people who have to play under those conditions with pain all over their body, because I know how Stugotz limps here in every day complaining about his back, and he's not quiet about it.
Right.
And I feel for...
But I'm here and I'm playing, Dan.
I feel for it sometimes.
Sometimes I'm not playing, that's fair, but most of the times I'm playing. I mean,
recently, there have been times where your back injuries have kept you out. I believe you're leaving early again today.
God bless football, Dano.
You think I wanted to be here on Monday after the weekend that I had? After that Middle Tennessee State loss? No. The great ones rise above it. They show up, and then they lash out emotionally at their co-host.
You know how many times on a Monday I showed up after a Jet loss? I mean, pretty much 15 times a year. I mean, what do you want from me?
How about us?
You guys are toughing it out?
Yeah. I mean,
How
did you
about
see?
us?
Did you see the start the show got off?
They
to?
were
Chris
all
Whittingham
slurring.
called somebody Jaish.
They were we're the only place in Florida spared from the hurricane. All of us are so exhausted by getting a podcast up 4 hours late yesterday that everyone's slurring this morning from shuttering our windows and eating all our canned food on the first day.
Well, we should take the transition to say, like, it seems as though there are parts of the west coast of Florida that are just totally devastated. Like, never make it back to what it was. Got to restart. There's the horrifying picture of the bridge that leads to Sanibel Island, Fort Myers, a lovely part of this state, totally underwater with storm surge in some parts that it's reaching 9-10 feet.
We have not yet seen the worst of the footage because as Cantori and these people are being hit by trees and stuff, the places that are most ravaged can't have reporting, don't have power, and so you will get more and more video later that's going to be horrifying about and pictures about devastation that was supposed to come to Tampa. And God bless, if it had come to Tampa, it would have been even worse than it already is, and it's plenty bad. But it went a little bit north, and so those 10-foot waves, weirdly in Tampa, the bay got sucked out because it was being taken elsewhere. The water was being taken elsewhere.
It
say
went
that,
south, by the way.
Yeah.
It went to Saratoga in that area.
Yeah, well, we say that.
Sarasota, excuse me.
It's just that Tampa is a more densely populated area, so the loss of life may have been compounded by that. It seems as though this has been a major life-affecting event in terms of fatalities that this storm has wrought. Also, that's not the end of it because of lack of power, because of things like down power lines, because of rising water levels, lack of food, lack of help being able to access it. It's just the tip of the iceberg, unfortunately, and it's horrific to see because, as you mentioned, it could have happened to Tampa. It could happen to us. It's the reality of living in this state.
This is the new normal, though. When you talk about it's the reality of living in this state, when the storms, I know it happens, a gun control argument or discussion starts when people die in a school with guns, and that's the first place people end up when they feel helpless and hopeless and see death. We just go too quickly into the arguing about things, and so it'll become a climate change discussion, and people will deny climate change and say there are always storms and there are always hurricanes. But I have lived all my life here without ever being scared of storms. I've slept through storms that are coming directly here, through Andrew, which was close. Like, this is not something I'm afraid of, and I've never been more afraid because what you're about to see from video here is going to be life-altering and destructive to people, that if it came to your home and you saw your car or your boat, even in South Florida, weirdly, I don't know how much video there was of this, but just there was a dock with 2 boats just floating by in South Florida, and we're one of the unscathed places because people lost so much property and so many things that mattered to them, and then there are all those people who just couldn't get out, didn't have the resources to get out.
Yeah, and Floridians are naturally predisposed to not leave, and I think that was fortified by years of the storms not being as major and getting lucky. The data doesn't lie. The storms are getting more intense. You're not imagining that. If we went through a hurricane season, it would be like, oh, this is a really bad one. It's a Category 4, Category 5. Now, if something gets into the Gulf or the Florida Straits, it's almost guaranteed
because the water's warmer, so they're going to get it. Because the water is warmer, the storms are going to keep getting stronger. This is like 6 or 7 in the Gulf Coast of this magnitude since 2017, and the havoc they wreak, if it came anywhere near you, anyone listening to this, it would alter your life in a way that you wouldn't be able to forget.
I can't even imagine like how surreal it must be to be on the second, third story of my beach condo and just to see a boat passing by my window. It's horrific imagery, and like you said, like we haven't seen the worst of it whatsoever. It is horrific, and it makes you count your blessings to not have to, at least down here, and we've been hit by things like Irma, Wilma, Katrina before it hit New Orleans, and they've been kind of bad, but thankfully not since really 92 have we had one of those just devastating, all right, we're starting back at the baseline type of storms, and now with the uptick in it, it's just a matter, every hurricane season, you're just hoping to get lucky.
Do you know how horrifying it is to have all of these meteorologists who for days have sort of been excited by this phenomenon of nature roaring to life with elements that are hugely destructive, to see them watch what is happening and be titillated and scared
and angry.
And I'm watching meteorologists. I think do we still need them standing in the street?
I mean, Jim Cantori's life was saved if you just extrapolate where he was standing to where pieces of debris were flying by. If you were watching the Weather Channel, and it was obviously captivating television yesterday, there were plenty of veteran reporters that have covered dozens and dozens of storms. I heard one that said he's covered about 90 named storms, and this was the worst devastation he had ever seen. This was the worst storm he had experienced up to that point. They're getting more intense. They're hitting more densely populated areas. They're hitting areas that they don't routinely hit. And it's a really scary time. And you know that living in Florida, and particularly South Florida, it's kind of like the unlucky lottery. But unfortunately, now the math has changed, and the hurricanes have more tickets to totally ruin your life. And unfortunately, if you've listened to enough scientists, you know it's just a matter of time down here, and it's terrifying. It's made me it affected where I moved because I wanted something a little bit more inland because I've been fearing this, and I fear that the life that we've built down here, the careers that we've built down here, will one day, with a snap of a finger, be no more, and it's terrifying. It's hard to say when you see such heartbreaking imagery, and you know that other people are dying because
it could easily happen right here.
That yes. You feel blessed and lucky because it didn't happen to you this time.
It seems like the new normal. The idea of scampering, because where we do this on the beach, obviously this would be an evacuation zone. Like it is a cruel and awful lottery. I don't know how many people in Fort Myers or Sarasota yesterday or Naples were saying to themselves, thank God it's going to be Tampa.
And then Tampa saying, thank God it's not us.
And it's just something where you don't feel safe no matter where it is you are. I've always thought that I was going to live and be buried in this city, that my roots would forever be here. And so when you think of it in those terms, is this just going to wash away? Is one day it going to be very hard because of power and everything else? Look how hard it was. We were unscathed yesterday, and look how hard it was to get the show out to everybody just yesterday. The idea of trying to do this for months without power.
That feels passive aggressive.
Yeah, that was a megaphone issue. That wasn't us. Like, we showed up to work.
That was Jace's fault.
Yeah, Jace.
Nothing to do with the hurricane?
No, it was just megaphone
okay.
server.
But I thought
would have happened if we were here.
So does it have anything to do with you guys slurring?
It sounds better though. No. Us slurring? No, it's just like we had hurricane parties and drank a lot of wine.
I ate 1,000 Trader Joe's cacio e pepe cheese puffs.
Oh, $2 chucks.
Nice.
A little $2 chuck.
Mm-hmm.
Always $2 chuck.
Mike
I
Ryan
had a little gummy. I mean,
you had a lot of wine and Dahmer the other night, which is a dark turn. My wife can run dark, and she tried Dahmer, and it was too dark for her.
Yeah, Dahmer. I was kind of drawn to Dahmer by the online discourse that was going around there, and I understand the victims' families feel taken advantage of, and there are some people that are arguing that Dahmer glamorizes Jeffrey Dahmer, and you always have that discussion anytime there's a feature made on a serial killer. I don't think it glamorizes Jeffrey Dahmer. I think stylistically, you could look at Ryan Murphy's shows and say he just glamorizes everything. That's kind of his overproduced style.
But if you're a family member who has had someone eaten by this person, you wouldn't want a feature film in the time of murder is content, murder pays. We're in a dark period in American entertainment, and people are just like binging the darkest of murder shit.
Oh, I understand that, but that's cinematic art. There's a lot of people that feel certain ways about World War II, and you still see beautiful pieces of art made on that. I'm not saying Dahmer is that. Dahmer's very much a television show experience, like kind of a pop culture event to a degree. And so I'm watching it. I don't necessarily like it, but I'm watching the entire thing. I think Evan Peters' performance is captivating. I'm not a big fan of Ryan Murphy's style, but I am interested in those types of things, which I understand might be a bit of a red flag, but I am kind of drawn to hearing these stories and seeing exactly like how cold and callous someone could be like that. And I don't think that they excuse the behavior a lot. Oftentimes they just reinforce, no, there's nothing wrong with me. I kind of like eating people and I like doing this stuff. And it's very disturbing and really well performed on the part of Evan Peters, I think.
Excusing the behavior? I don't know that there's a way for anyone to excuse.
Oh no, that's some of the online discourse.
Yeah, like I've seen some. At first, I saw a essay that one of like the family members of a victim wrote about how Netflix didn't ask to portray her in this series. Like they have an actor playing her and didn't even tell her, and that this whole thing was re-traumatizing her, and like that. When you make a series like this, you should consider that there are survivors and victims who are still alive before you're going to like dramatize something really terrible that happened. And then I saw more discourse of people finding, I guess, sympathy for Dahmer, and it was, I haven't seen it.
Well, it's roots of upbringing, right? There are some patterns. I don't know whether it's humanizing or not, or even if the attempt is to be humanizing. But if you're going to go into root behavior of how did this crazy person become a cannibal, I'm supposing that they're trying to explore that.
Yeah.
They do try to explore that, but they never try to make the rationalization. Anytime you think that they're inching towards that, Dahmer, in his own words, say, yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with me. Yeah, I like this. I maybe have an obsession with shiny organs or somewhat, but no,
well, that's what's wrong with
I just like doing it. I like killing people.
Thanks, Stu.
Mm-hmm. I'm here for you.
One thing, my main takeaway is that Jeffrey Dahmer was a bad guy.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't say.
No. Count me out.
Yeah,
I am
cannibal.
I am not in on Jeffrey Dahmer, the person.
A cannibal.
Thank you for clarifying that.
That's
Totally.
good. Strong take.
Bad things.
Yeah.
Strong
Bad
take.
things.
You said some stuff that, if taken out of context earlier, sounds like you're saying it, and you might want to just.
You want to make a public apology now?
What, for watching a Ryan Murphy show?
Yes.
I should have known better. As someone that watched all of Nip Tuck, I apologize.